The honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
8 years times zero targets met is still zero. Yeah. And after 8 years of that zero government, Canadians know that their environmental record is nothing but hot air and hypocrisy. The Bay of Fundy can supply green tidal energy to all of Nova Scotia and make us a net exporter of green energy. Yeah. The only successful project to harness the power of the Bay of Fundy, delivering endless green energy, was killed by these Liberals when they refused to renew the permit. They killed capital investment in tidal power. Why does this Prime Minister claim to support green energy but veto green tidal projects?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
You know what is the height of hypocrisy, Mr. Speaker? It's a member of Parliament who was elected on a campaign platform that included a price on pollution who now disavows that every day in this House. It's an Atlantic Canadian member of Parliament who is actively opposing the development of a major offshore wind and hydrogen project in Nova Scotia in direct opposition to the Conservative Premier of his province. That, Mr. Speaker, is the height of hypocrisy. Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the environment, the costly Liberal Bloc coalition has a tax plan, not an environmental plan. And what's the result? Is that this association with the Bloc is bad news because the Bloc Québécois wants to significantly increase taxes and the Liberals are on board. The Commissioner of the Environment concluded that Canada is not going to meet its 2030 target. They have been focusing on this for 8 years, but is someone in this government going to say that the reality is that they actually have a tax plan, not an environmental plan? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, I have the honour and dignity to keep the promises that we made to Canadians during the last election. We agreed to putting a price on pollution. The Conservatives promised the same, but then they're backing down. We have clean fuel standards, and the Conservatives offered the same thing, but then they've backed down. I don't understand why Canadians would believe anything the Conservative Party has to say. We can't trust them, not on the environment, not on the economy, and not on affordability. The Honourable Member for Louis-Saint-Laurent. Nothing personal, but I'm going to address the Minister of the Environment directly. He has defended the environment throughout his entire career, and yet, just a few days ago, he accepted a carve-out from the carbon tax. This minister, full of honour and dignity, can he rise and say that he's pleased to see that we have a carve-out in the carbon tax? Clearly, they have a tax plan, not an environmental plan. All members know that all questions and answers need to be directed through the chair. The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Through you, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to respond to my honourable colleague that I am proud to be part of a government that not only believes that climate change is happening, but is fighting to set up measures which are working. We went from 12% an increase of greenhouse gas emissions to 8% above the 2005 levels. Certainly not thanks to the Conservative Party because they did nothing for 10 years. The plan is working. We're within 85% of our 2030 objective. I agree with the Commissioner that there's work to be done. That's why Canadians have to continue to support us so that we can continue to move forward on the fight against climate change and not move back into the Stone Age like the Conservative Party.
From Wellington,
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. After 8 years of environmental failure, the costly Bloc Liberal coalition is not worth the cost to the environment. The carbon tax, which the Bloc wants to increase, is not an environmental plan, but a tax plan, tax Canadians, which has failed to meet Canada's environmental goals in 7 of the 8 years of this Liberal government. In fact, Canada is at the bottom of the pack out of 63. After these successive failures, will the PM finally admit that he doesn't have an environmental plan, but a tax one? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to correct my colleague. What he said is inaccurate. Not only is the carbon tax working, but the Commissioner confirmed this morning at the Environment Committee, and I would invite my colleague to listen to the minutes from this meeting. But not only is the carbon tax working, but it's the equivalent of removing 11,000 vehicles from the road. Our plan is working. We're on track to attaining our objectives, but it's certainly not thanks to the Conservative Party that we're going to get there. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker, 1/4 of Canadians have to turn to assistance to meet their housing and food needs. After 8 years of his tax plan, this Prime Minister is not worth the environmental cost. The Liberals have killed all clean energy projects in Canada. There was a national gas project in Saguenay, and an environment minister is opposed to the nuclear power. And they're against innovative carbon capture and storage projects. He has to admit, the minister, that the environmental plan isn't working. When will the government stop killing clean energy products and admit their plan isn't working? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. My colleague has also said something inaccurate. When we took power, online production went up by 60%. GM, Stellantis, Northvolt. These are all projects that the Conservatives opposed. We've invested in Quebec and Ontario in batteries, and we are here to create a sustainable environment and economy for future Canadians. And the Conservatives have no plan for the economy or the fight against climate change, and no plan for affordability.